Welcome back, Ram fans. Mark from Rams Up here. It is Rams Cutdown Day. I know it's early July, a little bit early for this, but we're going to do it. We're going to cut down this Rams roster down to 53 players, and you can follow along as I make these cuts. If you are listening on the podcast, you can jump over to the YouTube channel and follow along as I make these cuts, move players from each position group to the cut list, or add them to the roster, the 53-man roster, channeling Les Snead here for the next 20 minutes or so. Going to give it my best shot, and I'll share this sheet with you. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, I'll keep you updated as best I can. I think it all makes sense to you. On this spreadsheet, I have a current list of 86 players listed by position group, and the total number over there on the right, 86 players. As I move players from these position groups to the cut list, that number will be reduced. And the players in that the highlighted players with the colored shaded cells are players that I've already added to this roster, considering them done deals. Probably could have done a lot more than that. So by the time we're done here, everybody will be shaded. 53 players anyways will be shaded with highlighted cells, and then the rest will be on that cut list. A lot of them potentially moving over to the practice squad at some point. So let's make a first sweep through this, shall we? We have 11 cornerbacks, and one of them is Jordan Jones, and I think he's going to be my first move from this. He's going to be the first guy to turn in his playbook, should we put it that way. He's moved over to this cut list. And Tamaricus Davis out of Arizona State, not to be confused with Tyon Davis, who has a better shot at making this roster. Davis is over on the cut list as well. If we look at the safeties, we have 8 here listed. By the way, the cornerbacks, if you're listening on the podcast, the only 2 highlighted, shaded for absolutely on this roster for sure are Durant and Kendrick. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add Tomlinson as well. Tomlinson is going to be on this roster for sure. So we'll get that done. And make sure I get the right color here. Thought I had this all nailed down. Not so much. There we go. So Tomlinson is on this roster as well. And we've moved 2 guys from the cornerback group to the cut list. Then we go to the safeties, and as I started to say, we're going to move Tanner Ingle over there. And, Richard LeCount coming back. Last year he was on the practice squad, another player out of Georgia. But we've added a draft pick, Taylor, and 2 undrafted rookies, Johnson and Torrance, that I think they have more upside than LeCount. LeCount is a good, strong candidate for the practice squad, but we'll move him over there for now. The inside linebacker group, I'm going to save that for later. I only have Ernest Jones as a lock to be on this roster for sure. I'm going to go ahead and add Hummel to that list as well. Hummel will be one of the inside linebackers. He'll be our number 2 linebacker. He's going to get a lot of snaps. And the rest of these guys, Roseboom, Square, Smenda, Anya Labecci, and Woodby. We'll come back to them later. On the edge, I got 3 guys for sure here, Hoyt, Young, and Hampton, and 3 guys outside looking in at the moment, Hardy, Mathis, and Thomas. I'm going to go ahead and add Thomas to the 53-man roster. We'll come back to Mathis and Thomas. And the defensive line, we got a lot of guys here, and I think we're going to have to whittle this down to 6 if I'm not mistaken. Teron Vincent out of Ohio State, Troy Vincent's son. He is done, as is Van Valkenburg, who at best is a defensive lineman. I'm sorry, at best limited to defensive end, maybe more of an outside linebacker in my opinion. And then TJ Carter moving over there as well. Let's get these formats right so we're consistent. And everybody else we'll come back to. As far as special teams, we have 3 guys locked in. Ethan Evans, Alex Ward, and Tanner Brown, the kicker. I'll leave it at that. Nothing more to say about that. And we go to the wide receiver group. We're going to ask Xavier Smith to turn in his playbook, as well as Burmeister, the multi-talented kid out of San Diego State, and Tyler Hudson as well. We're going to have some tougher decisions in a moment, though. Along the offensive line, I'm thinking we're going to carry 9, and you know what? I already have 9 highlighted there. Nopum, Avila, Shelton, Ankrum, Havenstein, Lyric Jackson, Bruss, Allen, and the rookie McClendon, 2 rookies, Avila and McClendon. Now, if you listened last week, Tom Courts is predicting Ankrum's actually going to be a starter, as well as Lyric Jackson. Don't make too much out of how I have this arranged. Things will change. I'm just telling you which ones are on the 53-man roster. And I'm going to go ahead and move Miller, Magin, or is it Magin? I'm sorry, I don't even know. And Zach Thomas, who I think of those 3 is the most likely one to end up on the practice squad, as well as McAllister. I know Sean McVay's been talking him up a little bit, but I still think he's a practice squad guy. And then we get to the quarterback groups. Wynn will be cut, and running backs will leave them alone for now, and Sims, the tight end, will be cut. So that's our first sweep through the roster, and we're down to 70 players, 17 more cuts to come. And there's really only 2 position groups that are done here. The quarterbacks, Stafford, Bennett, and Ripien, and the special teams, Evans, Ward, and Brown. Okay, second sweep. Let's go through these cornerbacks again. And Cameron McCutcheon, he was our biggest cornerback, I believe, until we signed Witherspoon. We're going to move McCutcheon over here to the cut list, and then we're going to make Witherspoon. We're going to add him to the roster. He's here to stay, probably a starter. And then Rochelle as well. We're going to give him 1 more year to develop. And then let's jump over to the safety group, because this is kind of tied together. I'm adding Lake and Taylor to the roster. And I think Johnson or Torrance, one of them is going to make the roster. And I think Johnson has a more balanced game, more upside, very similar players, though, from what I can see. But we're going to add Johnson, and we're going to hopefully get Torrance on our practice squad. Now, this affects the cornerback group because Vincent Gray is a guy, he's the only guy of all these defensive backs that is listed as a defensive back, meaning the Rams see him as a crossover player, a hybrid cornerback safety. But I think our safety group is strong enough with a guy like Taylor and Johnson in the wings there that's going to hurt Gray's chances of making the team. So I'm going to go ahead and cut him. And that leaves, we already have 5 cornerbacks, and I don't think we're carrying more than that. But let's wait and see how the rest of this roster pans out. But I'm going to say the safety group is done. East, Fuller, Lake, Taylor, and Johnson, Quindell Johnson, the undrafted rookie. Now we go over to the inside linebackers. We haven't really talked about them at all, and I think we're going to carry 4. I'm going to give Roseboom the nod, and then the other 4. It's a fight between those 4 for the last roster spot, and at this point, I just got to admit, it was really just guesswork at this point. I think all of these guys, they just have to earn it in training camp. Again, just guessing here, really. It's a full disclosure, but I'm going to give that job to Woodby, the roster spot to Woodby. And we are down to 64 players, and another position group is done. The inside linebackers, we are done with them. We have our 4 inside linebackers. Clean up the sheet here a little bit. Now on the edge, Keir Thomas, O'Shawn Mathis. I like Keir Thomas. He's a guy I talked about recently on a podcast of a guy that we shouldn't underestimate. But I'm going to give the nod to Mathis here. Mathis, if he plays anything close to what he did in his first year at TCU, watch out. Really athletic. But Keir Thomas, he was somewhat productive, had his moments last year when called upon, but I'll give the nod to Mathis. And that's one. It's really a coin toss at this point. Give the nod to the 6th-round pick, though. We go to the defensive line, and I think we're going to carry 6 guys here. I'm going to move Murchison to the yes list. I really liked how he played in place of Aaron Donald last year. We need some size along here. That's what we're really lacking, and that's what's going to hurt Ernest Brown and Johnson. Mr. Irrelevant, we're going to, hopefully he gets on the practice squad. We'll move him off there. And I'm going to give the nod to Jonah Williams and move Ernest Brown to the cut list. And we have another position group that's done. I reserve the right to move a guy back here. There, when we get down to the nitty gritty here, as they say, I may change my mind and move a guy back. Offensive line, we're going to carry 10. I don't think so, but let's hold off. Let's go through the wide receivers first. I'm going to add Nakua to this roster, and I'm going to, I think we're definitely carrying 6 wide receivers. So who'd be the next guy up? I think it's DeMarcus Robinson. And, I was a big booster of Austin Trammell, but with these new additions and the drafting of Pakua, I'm going to move Trammell over to the cut list. Although he's a guy that I could see in taking part in the return game, and if it comes down to that, maybe they keep him. And that leaves McCutcheon and Johnson. I don't think Lance McCutcheon's going to make this roster. I know a lot of people love him based on the preseason performance last year. But sorry, I'm going to pass on Lance McCutcheon. He ends up back on the practice squad. The running back group, the thing that gives Sony Michel the edge over Ronnie Rivers, it's kind of like the same deal with Witherspoon sticking with the cornerbacks. You get one guy with experience. Can we have one running back with some serious experience in the NFL? We know he can pass block. We know he can pick up the tough yardage. And Ronnie Rivers is cut for now. What are we down to 58? We still have some cuts here. We're going to have to move a Curry off of this offensive line group. And I think he's a guy that will get signed somewhere. And it just gives you an indication of what I have been saying. Our offensive line group, we may not have any super studs on this offensive line, although Avila could turn into that. We have overall a pretty solid group. A guy like a Curry can't even make this roster. McClendon and Avila, 2 rookies. Got Logan Bruss coming back. See if he can prove himself. And if Bruss can't, that could be an opening for our Curry, even though our Curry's more of a tackle. So I think that position group is done as well. Now the tight ends, people saying 4 tight ends. Not going to happen, folks. Not going to be 4 tight ends. And I think Hunter Long offers something that Hopkins doesn't, and that's the ability to stretch the field to be more of a true receiving tight end. I know McVay likes his blockers, but the fact that we have Skowronek on this roster de-emphasizes the need for a blocking tight end a little bit and de-emphasizes the need for 4 tight ends. And for that reason, I am adding Long to this roster and relegating Hopkins to the practice squad. He will probably get picked up somewhere as well. So what do we have? We are down to 56 players. Who's left to cut? We're going to get rid of 2 cornerbacks. Jolly, who I really like, and Tyon Davis, of all the undrafted rookies, one that early on really performed in minicamp, and he has a chance of making this roster, but I'm going to say no at this time. And Tyon Davis will be on this practice squad almost for sure, right? And that leaves one last cut. We're going to cut an offensive lineman, or are we going to cut Tyler Johnson? It's going to be Tyler Johnson. And that's it. We're done. We have our 53-man roster, 25 players on offense, 25 players on defense, 3 special teamers. I'll run down this roster in case you're listening on the podcast. The cornerbacks, Durant, Kendrick, Rochelle, Witherspoon, and Tomlinson. The safeties, Yeast, Fuller, Lake, Taylor, and Quindell Johnson. The inside linebackers, Jones, Roseboom, Hummel, and Woodby. Woodby's just picking one of those 3 or 4 guys. Someone's going to have to make it, right? The edge rushers, Hoyt, Young, Hardy, Hampton, and Mathis. Defensive line, Donald, Turner, Brown, Murchison, Jonah Williams, and Marquise Copeland. And Ethan Evans, Alex Ward, and Tanner Brown, the specialists. On offense, the wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Ben Skowronek, Tutu Atwell, Puka Nacua, and Demarcus Robinson. 9 offensive linemen, Noteboom, Avila, Shelton, Ankrum, Havenstein, Alaric Jackson, Logan Bruss, Brian Allen, and Warren McClendon. 3 quarterbacks, Stafford, Bennett, and Rippon. 4 running backs, Akers, Evans, Williams, and Michelle. And 3 tight ends, Higbee, Davis Allen, and Hunter Long. And there you have it, the Rams 53-man roster. And if you have any issues with this, I welcome you to come back to send me an email, ramspodcast@gmail.com, or comment on this video, reach out to me, and I'll have you on. I'll have you on the podcast and maybe a video pod, and we'll talk about this 53-man roster, where I went wrong, if you think I did. Hey, it's all in good fun. Working towards this Rams 53-man roster. That's my best guess at this point. Hopefully it makes sense. I'm sure I'll get some feedback on this one, but that's it. Out here from Rams Up for now.